Good morning, everyone. I had a cancellation this morning, so it gave me quite a bit of time, and I thought I would jump on and shoot a quick video about plastering your cob or mudding them, but not to be confused with mudding the bottom of the bowl, so we'll just call it plastering, which you've probably heard people talk about before, and I don't think anybody's ever really explained the process or talked about how they go about doing it. They might have, I just never seen the video, but it's pretty straightforward as far as it goes. But maybe this will help some of you guys in the homegrown cob foolery, where you have to do a mod or plaster the cob yourself to get a smooth finish, or maybe you're doing a mod and you're adding corn cob to it, or there's a couple reasons you might plaster a cob when you're modding. One would be, yeah, if you're doing a homegrown or you have a naked cob that you want to jazz up, I guess you could say, if you want to make it smooth. You're doing a mod where you cut into something, or you're reshaping it and you get a little bit of chip out. There's quite a few reasons why you would do it. But anyways, this is how I go about doing it. This is kind of the process I've, over the last couple of years, kind of came across that works really well. First is the plaster of Paris, of course. Comes in this old milk jug looking container. Get it pretty much at any hardware store, and this stuff will last you forever. And then you're going to obviously mix that with water. Consistency wise, you kind of got to play around with it until you find one that's pretty good. If you go a little too wet, when it dries, the solids in it will, the water will evaporate, and then whatever solid is in there kind of shrinks, so you'll get a lot of gaps. If you can go too heavy, it doesn't kind of get down into the crevices as good. So you got to kind of play around with it. Worst case scenario, you got to do it more than once. Which if you have a naked cob, you might have to do it anyways. But I have one of my homegrown cobs here that's kind of in the mid state of being mudded or plastered. So I figured I'd share it with you, where some of it's good and some of it's not, and I gotta maybe do another coat. But basically, you take your whatever you're mudding, and then I use the plaster of Paris for the first application, I guess you could say, or coat, and maybe the first two. It seems to work really good. You can see some places where it won't. I don't know if I can get it focused, where it's not going to fill, but then you have places like right here. Let's see if I can get it to focus good enough, where it is already filled. So this is kind of a mid state where I'm going to have to mud it again. And don't know if we can get it real close, but like here, it looks rough, but it's actually smooth, and that's that pattern you can sometimes get in these cobs starting to show through. So this will have to be mudded again. Yet hopefully that comes through in the video good enough where you can see where it kind of is filled and where it's not. And of course, I already got a hole drilled through the cob. So this is a homegrown cob. And the reason why I got a hole drilled through it, and there's another little tip, and I've covered this before, and it's a 1/4 inch hole. Once, because one reason is because I got my centering hole for when I'm going to do my bowl. Two is I'll take a 1/4 inch bolt, and then a fender washer, and then a nut, and tighten that down so it holds it. Don't go super crazy if you do this, because this bolt will pull through that pith in the middle because it's soft. Just enough it's snug, it won't move around. So a good crank, not farmer type. But anyways, this allows you, gives you a handle. Also, if you have a drill press, once it's mudded, you can put it in the drill press and then kind of sand it on the drill press, or a hand drill would probably work, where you just put the paper on like that, and that'll save you some time sanding. Then once I get 3/4 of it all filled out and looking nice, like a smooth cob, I found that using Walp joint compound that you get pre-mixed, I got a little container of it, really helps if you have to do any touch-ups and stuff, or for a final plastering of the cob. It's a little bit, the consistency is consistent. But for the final kind of coat, maybe one or two if you miss some spots, that stuff seems to work better. So I use a combination of plaster of Paris to start with, and then maybe the joint compound towards the end to help fill any little pieces I missed. without having to make a huge mess. Either way, it's super messy, and when you're sanding it, definitely wear a mask, especially if you're using a drill press or a drill to spin it while you sand it. So hopefully that's helpful to anybody, but mostly for you guys, you know, in the homegrown cob foolery, because some of you guys have been wondering probably how I grew that cob and then got it to look like that. So yeah, I wish I could get a better view. It has that cool grain. It almost looks like that kind of eyeball grain. So it'll start to show through. And then when you plaster stuff, I've noticed like the stuff you plaster yourself, the color might be a little more, I don't know, I want to say pure a little bit when you put it on. So if you got like a light brown, it's going to soak into that plaster, and it might be more of a, not a dark brown, but darker than you normally if you're putting it on one that's already been sealed. So there you go. That's how you can plaster your cobs. Like I said, it might help for other mods. It might help for one you plan on dyeing, where you just want to smooth it out more than the stock finish that comes from Missouri Meerschaum. Or, like I said, if you're in a homegrown foolery, hopefully that'll help you out. Hopefully that explains the process a little bit better. So, you have a good Friday.